guys, what's going on? David Avalon here with Robert Drysdale for another edition of the Breaking the Guard podcast. Robert just came back from a big European vacation.
Right? I wouldn't call it a vacation. It seems like it if you follow me on Instagram because no one posts boring pictures.
Well, you post really good pictures.
I work on it, man. I've always liked live photography. I try to work on better angles. And just off my phone. I got to get a professional camera one of these days. But I had a layover in Portugal, Lisbon, which I'd never been to. I always really wanted to go.
It's beautiful.
And it was like a 6-7 hour layover. So you know what? I'm going to walk around. It's like a day off walking around Lisbon. It was very beautiful. Highly recommended. A lot of Brazilians there. I expected Brazilians, but I think half the people I interacted with were Brazilians. I was surprised. And then I went to Sweden, Ireland, Strasbourg in France, and then I had a day off in Paris. So some seminars. Shout out to Cuso Dublin for hosting me, SPR in Stockholm, and Infinity Jiu Jitsu in Strasbourg for hosting the seminar. So I had a lot of fun. I hope they enjoyed too.
Nice. I'm sure they did, man. I'm sure they did. Yeah. Very cool. So I wanted to start today with, I saw some news, Keenan Cornelius just opened up his new gym, or he's opening up his new gym, Legion.
I heard it's beautiful.
BJJ.
Someone who's been there said it's supposed to be I think 7,000 square feet of mat space. That's just crazy in jiu-jitsu. It's unheard of.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I'm happy that he was able to make that move. I know he's bounced around to a few places trying to find his own spot, and sometimes you have to make it yourself.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta, I think he's too big to go in someone else's home, and I don't think he wants that. I think he has the aspiration to do something else. I think he's gonna start slowing down competing soon. It's a natural progression. Now you want to be more of a coach, business owner kind of thing, and he seems like it seems to me that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, and like you said, natural progression from becoming a heavy competitor, and then now slowly starting to fade back a little bit. And become coaching. His online coaching has done really well. So, it's the right direction, I think, for him. One of the things that he sparked a little controversy on there was two things, really. One of them is he's calling his brand of jiu-jitsu American Jiu Jitsu, or AJJ. He's not the first one. No. I think Jake Shields was...
I think he has tattooed, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think Jake Shields was the first guy to put out American Jiu Jitsu as a brand, right? So, but he would be essentially following that lineage. So I guess we can start there, and we'll go to the second one afterwards. So, my thoughts on it, you can call it whatever you want, I suppose. It seems kind of weird in the sense because he is training. He learned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? This, even though I know he was somewhere else before. I think Lloyd Irvin, then Lloyd Irvin. And even though Lloyd Irvin's American, it's still Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he doesn't. Yeah. Branded any differently, and then he went to Atos, and that's more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I guess there would have to be a clarification. What makes your Jiu-Jitsu American?
Yeah, I think it just depends. There are two different things here. One of them is, are you claiming it as Brazilian or American or Japanese or Argentinian? Because for nationalistic purposes, I was born here, I'm proud of my country, I love my country, I don't want to practice a sport that has someone else's country on there. Right, and that will be one motivation. The other one will be, are there cultural traits that have been assimilated into the martial art itself, not just on the technical level, but even on the social level, right? And I've always been of two minds. I'm probably better positioned than most people because of this, because I've done a lot of training in Brazil here. I got dual citizenship, and my take on it initially was always to be against any kind of nationalism, because that's how I saw why Brazil. We didn't call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Brazil, incidentally. You don't go to China ask for Chinese food. I actually did that in Thailand. I asked for Thai tea in Thailand. They were looking at me like I'm crazy, But no one calls it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Brazil. It's why call it here? So I didn't like it at first, but I understand why a lot of people wanted to use it, because there's a lot of people that still make the association with the traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, often, swords and spears.
Sure,
and things that we don't practice. So it's not, because what we practice, we call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I actually think we should call it Brazilian Judo, if you ask me. It's a far more appropriate term to call it Brazilian Judo, because that's what it is. It's a variant of Judo. That's all it is, right? But we call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I actually, I don't like it for the nationalistic purposes, because I don't think they belong in martial arts. I love the fact that the IBJJF circuit is fought amongst teams and not nations. I like that, because all of a sudden you find yourself rooting for the guy that's from Mexico, or Bulgaria over the guy that was born in the same country you were. It's kind of a break of that like Olympic thing of like Americans versus Russians or so on.
Right.
I'm not against. I mean, honestly, it doesn't really matter. Like I said, it doesn't. For practical purpose, it makes no difference. But there seems to be a little element of resentment in why he's calling American Jiu Jitsu, particularly now. He's been very critical of IBJJF, and he feels that IBJJF has conspired against him throughout his career to prevent him from winning because he's American. Right? I don't believe that. I think it's not the case for a lot of other Americans who have won. Like Musumeci was just here. He won 3 world titles, So, and his matches have been somewhat controversial too. Like some of them are very close. Like that Mikey was never one of those guys. I mean, if you look at his every world title he's won, David, he wasn't like putting people away. It wasn't like one of those decisive wins. They were like won by advantage or barely, very close calls, which is typical of the division too. So I think it's more out of maybe the resentment towards the fact that he feels that Brazilians have been unfair, or IBJJF specifically has been unfair throughout his career.
Yeah, and I've been to some of his early matches back when he was still with Lloyd Irvin. I believe he was a brown belt. He was fighting in the Worlds, I believe it was the Worlds, brown belt Worlds or the gi. And I was coaching him because Lloyd was coaching someone else. And I saw some really bad calls, horrendous calls, where he swept the guy, got into the mount, got the back mount, got back into the mount, and had no points the whole time, which could have been like easily a 10-point sequence, depending on who was scoring it. And then I remember I was just saying, just finish him because you're not getting points. And then he got a triangle afterwards. And that was just one match I saw. So I'm sure he's had a few of those, and that might have colored, And that, again, that's one match, But I think more important is if you have a thought in your mind already, and then you start getting confirmation bias, right? Like you start seeing things happen. Oh, it happened because of this.
Yeah.
And
you see what you want to see.
Yeah, and so you start seeing what you want to see, right? So, I'm sure there's some historical precedent for that. But like you said, there's Americans have won now. I think that kind of, you might say it might have been existed in the past, maybe. But at this point, I think it's probably not there. But I do believe you're right in the sense where the spirit of this is coming from is like maybe a spite, more of a renegade type thing.
Yeah.
More maybe a marketing angle, like, hey, everybody's doing this. I'm the young American guy. I'm doing American Jiu Jitsu now, right?
Especially Americans are fiercely nationalistic. The other thing is Brazilians are not. Like, I grew up in Brazil. I know this.
Yeah.
Like Brazilians are not. I mean, the only time Brazilians are fiercely nationalistic is when they play soccer. Against Argentinians particularly. Then they're dead serious about it. Other than that, like they're really not. Every now and then you see these guys, they walk in a cage with the Brazilian flag, and it's like so not like them to do that. I think because maybe they're, maybe because Brazil doesn't do well in a lot of sports. I mean, consider the size of the country when you really look at it. It's like soccer, volleyball, jiu-jitsu, MMA. There's like a handful of other sports where Brazilians like competitive at.
Right.
So I think it's almost like one of those things that in your face, like here's my flag, but they overall generally, I think the vast majority, there's statistics on this, the vast majority of Brazilians cannot sing the national anthem. Like they don't know it. Granted, it's a really long one. Like it's their excuse for not knowing. It's really, I actually do. I can see it from beginning to end, but I don't think they're national. I don't think there's anything going on other than confirmation bias. I mean, he'd probably bet if you could actually measure it, maybe they were unfair with him in some situations, but I think that happens to everyone, man. Like I've been screwed playing. I grew up in Brazil, man. Like I know what it's like to be an American in Brazil. And Brazilians don't consider me Brazilian.
Right.
That's the thing. Like I'm Brazilian, maybe considered as in here. When I'm in Brazil, I'm full on American.
Yeah, you're considered the half breed. Some people won't consider you American here, and then you're not considered Brazilian there.
I never felt it. I got screwed playing. I just never felt they weren't fair with me because of my nationality. It never crossed my mind. I don't believe that. I think they were unfair with me because, I like this guy. I'm friends with him. I train with him. He's my buddy. You beat me last week, so I'm going to I don't know. Maybe some dumb reason like that. But not, you were born in a different country. I'm going to screw with you, And in the case of IBJJF, I don't believe it for other reasons. First of all, the best trained referees out there by far, in my opinion. By far. In the grappling, submission, wrestling, jiu-jitsu circuit, by far the best trained referees. Granted, the rules are very complicated, but they have a financial interest in making jiu-jitsu neutral. You got to remember,
right?
I'd say the financial factor. I don't think that is a motivation, but if they were, I don't believe that IBJJF is motivated by that solely. But like, if that were a motivation, let's argue for argument's sake that it was a motivation. Wouldn't they be biased towards Americans, which is like 80% of their market?
Yeah.
The vast majority of the money is coming from the United States. If they were to make a decision, to me, it'd be the opposite, if anything, which clearly there's no conspiracy. You cannot get like 20 referees in the room and go, by the way, when Keenan fights, we're going to make sure he loses. Like, come on, guys. Like, who believes that, you know? But I just don't see it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think more the reason he's doing it is more just for the marketing angle of it. And maybe
it works.
And a little bit of spite. And yeah, you got to use what you got, so. But I think as far as like the legitimacy of it, I don't know, because I'm seeing the origins of where his martial arts came from. It was essentially all BJJ.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I could make a case I'm doing American Jiu Jitsu.
You could make a case.
Because
that's a good point.
Because
Jake Shields could too.
Jake Shields.
I kind of. I think Cesar Gracie a lot.
Cesar Gracie. Like, I have more of a, because I didn't have anybody. Yeah. Like, I was learning from grappling magazines, and the coach I had, he was a judo black belt.
Good point.
Japanese Jiu Jitsu black belt, but he wasn't really in BJJ. He didn't have any ranking in BJJ, and I didn't until I was already beating black belts, and then I got it afterwards. So I can make a case for that, but I don't. Like, I don't care. Like, I have my own brand, freestyle fighting. That's the style that we do. We have our own ranking system, and all that. So I get the idea of wanting to start your own brand,
Yeah.
But it's also not an original name. That's why I was saying, like, the only guy I could think of was Jake Shields. Was the first guy.
People have been flirting with it for a while.
But he was the only guy that I know prominently that was pushing AJJ.
Yeah, and then it kind of died, and then they're trying to make a comeback now, and then there is. I think that at the end of the day, it's kind of funny because he's still going to be practicing under IBJJF. He's not. It's not like unless you want to create a new federation, which is like, good luck with that, man. I think running a gym is hard. Imagine a federation. That's like a whole new operation there. But yeah, I mean, like, if it's, I respect people, wanting to do things and going a different route. I just don't think it's. Maybe I would agree with dropping the Brazilian if it weren't for the reason why people want to drop the Brazilian in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I think the reason why is if it's out of spite and resentment, then no. That's not a good reason. It's like, you know what? It just makes the word really long. Most people are educated enough to not confuse it with traditional Jiu-Jitsu anymore. We can drop it for that reason. Like, oh, for that reason, it makes sense to me. I'll tell you a story. Maybe I've told this story here before, so if not, forgive me if I'm repeating myself. But when we were filming Closed Guard, the documentary we're working on, we went to Kosen Judo schools in Tokyo, right? It's as traditional as it gets. They're very old school judokas. And for those of you who don't know, Kosen Judo is a variant inside of judo. They kind of clashed with Jigoro Kano a little bit, and they wanted more ground in judo. And Jigoro Kano was very he didn't like ground. He considered that, humans should walk. The ground is for animals. That's a quote from Jigoro Kano.
Interesting.
Right? Yeah, he thought the ground was for animals. He was very against the grappling, the ground aspect of grappling, right? Huge mistake, right? But the Kosen guys were very resistant, and it survived in universities in Japan. There were like 7 or 8 universities in Japan that continued to practice it, and is remarkably similar to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, the rules are different, but they play Spider Guard, De La Riva. It's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu pretty much, just with different rules, right? And we went to their school, and the black belts would show up 30 minutes before class, which is unheard of in any Brazil. No, if you're at my class like 20 minutes before class starts, like there's no one there, right? And the black belts, and I got a video of this. I got to post it one of these days. They're all sweeping the mats, right? And it was like a symphony of like black belts sweeping the mats, and their gis were immaculately clean, the cleanest gis you ever. They look like brand new gis. They were shining. They were so clean. They were so respectful towards me and the crew we had that I had with me, and then we went to Yuki Nakai's gym. And everyone was very respectful too. In that regard, it was the same. The Japanese are very respectful people. Yeah. But there was some major differences from Kosen Judo gym and the Yuki Nakai gym. They were a little more relaxed. They didn't show
casual,
up. Yeah, it was far more casual. They didn't show up that early. Like a few of them showed up late. And they kind of sat in the corner with their legs spread open, like taping their fingers, laughing, goofing around with their friends. And, there was this energy in the room that was very different, right? And that's when it dawned on me that, like, what they were practicing was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There was a lot of the Brazilian culture that had made it all the way back to Japan. There was that relaxed, show up late, kind of chill. Everyone's laughing on the mat. They're joking around a lot more. It was not nearly as militaristic as the Kosen Judo gyms had been, which were very, like, you could see it was very militaristic, right? And I think there's aspects of Brazilian culture that, for better or for worse, I think they've harmed Brazilian as a country as a whole a lot. I think when Brazilians are it's almost like they're too much. It's like, let's do it later. They're not the most organized people. Time is not really a thing. That's not everyone. They're very organized. IBJJF is the best example. The most organized grappling organization I know is IBJJF, and they're all run by Brazilians. So there are exceptions, but generally speaking, there's a lot of that in Brazil. But it's created this relaxed culture that I think a lot of people relate to, David, because, you know, people get from work, you're living on the tyranny of the clock, you know, and everything you do is timed, and you're under pressure from your boss and all these things. And you get to the gym, it's like, relax, you know, and I think that's attractive to a lot of people. And these are, in my opinion, you know, maybe you disagree, maybe some people think I'm pushing it too far, but I think there are a lot of aspects of Brazilian culture that have made it to the United States and Japan and around the world. When I go to Turkey or other countries in Europe, I see that. And it's something very, just this energy in the room that's not unlike other martial arts I've practiced. You know, the acai thing, that's a Brazilian thing, man. So I think for that reason, Brazil should be regarded as the birthplace of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or Brazilian Judo, as I prefer to call it these days. But you know, it's something that even Keenan, whether he realized or not, he's assimilated all of that. I guarantee you his American Jiu-Jitsu gym is not going to be like militaristic. There's going to be aspects of Brazilian culture that I can almost guarantee you.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let me ask you, with the Kosen Judo guys, do they compete in judo and stuff, or are they like a closed loop where they're just practicing for the art? Or
I think they probably compete I don't know for sure, but I know they have their internal circuit between universities.
Okay.
It's a university style.
Okay.
And they compete amongst, you know, these universities. And I'm not sure what the rules are, but they're different. Like, I've looked into it. I don't even want to mention it because I'm going to get it wrong. I'm sure you can look it up online and find out. But
they do compete.
They do compete, yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering, because I haven't myself seen a super strict regimen like that often, right? Like, even in wrestling circles, when you're training, it's very strict. Coaches are on you, pushing you all the time. But outside of training, you're a lot more relaxed, joking around, a lot more casual. So I was wondering if it's just a matter of it being a competitor thing, where competitors take the training very seriously, but then once they're done training, they would just want to kick back, like, oh, okay, I want to chill now. Versus somebody who's just doing the art form, they're doing the discipline itself is the relaxation in a sense. That's the meditation, you know. So everything before that is also like serious in a way.
Yeah,
you know,
it might be. I might be reading too much into it, but I mean, I chose an extreme example too, which is like Japanese judo, which is like they're known for their discipline. You know, even in like Western countries, the judokas tend to be the most disciplined out of everyone. Like, they're extremely respectful. I remember when I started training, like, you had to turn your back to everyone else to tie your gi. It was a big no-no to tie your belt while people could see you. They're not supposed to see your bare chest. You turn around, face the wall, and that's how you tie your gi. Like, you cannot walk past people. You have to walk behind them. And the coach, you know, actually it was a traditional jiu-jitsu style, like the one school in Brazil that existed of traditional jiu-jitsu. I found that school. But they had a lot, like, the guy was originally a judoka. And, you know, they had a lot of that. Like, you can't walk in front of people, past people. You have to walk always behind them. It's just a respectful thing to do, right? Little things like that, and they're very serious about it. And it's funny because you quickly fall in line because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah, sure.
So like, you're on the mat, you're like this all the time. It's almost like you're tense. It's hard to relax. And I love it from a business perspective, from a coach's perspective. But as a student, it's kind of like almost like you're holding your breath all the time. Because, like, you don't want to do it. It's you get used to it, of course. But I like that's one reason I love gyms, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in general, is because, like, I go and I don't know, even when I don't train, I want to be at the gym because it's such a fun environment. Like, I enjoy the company of other practitioners.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you bring, because most people who are training nowadays are like, they're doing it casually, right? Like, your competitors and fighters are less than 3% of your business, right? And almost everybody else is casual, and they have enough stress coming in from work and from life and whatever else is going on, and if they have to go into your gym in a very strict regimen and be worried about making a mistake or it's kind of like being back at work again for some people, right? And that kind of puts them off. And I think a lot of people with traditional martial arts, as an adult, that puts you off too, because you're like, I'm a grown ass man and I have to follow all these different little rules and stuff. Like, I have enough of that already. Whereas I think a lot of people like mixed martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because it's a lot more casual, so an adult can go in there and doesn't feel like they're being put in line like a child, like they can relax a little bit, have fun, get a good workout. So I think it's a much easier to sell, as a business, and it's probably just easier as a person to deal with, right? Like you're saying, you don't have to worry about like, how is my gi perfectly clean? There's no creases, or I got all my gear, So I could see that as being an appeal for anybody to want to go in and just be in a more relaxed atmosphere while still learning something very practical and getting a good workout. Yeah, because you don't see a lot of gyms that are, I don't know any really that are that crazy strict, like you were describing the Kosen Judo, where everybody is in. Yeah,
it may not be. I mean, Americans might be somewhere in between if you had to really put your finger on it. Like for example, I remember like I had I was in Brazil. I was broke ass. I had like 20 students. They're paying me like the equivalent of like $20 a month. Like I had enough to train. Yeah, that was it. I had enough money to train. That was it, right? So one idea I had is I went on one of these BJJ forums. I did this would have been like 2001, 2 maybe. I don't remember which the popular one was at the time. It might have been Underground something, whatever.
Yeah, Underground forums.
Sure. Yeah, and I went on there like train in Brazil and live with an American or something like that, right? I was a purple belt at the time. I'm like, hey, my name is Robert Drysdale. I live in Brazil. I was born in the U.S., speak fluent English. I went to school down here. If you would like to train in Brazil, you pay, I think I was charging like $500 a week or something like that. And I'll house you, feed you, pick you up from the airport, drop you off, train you, everything for $500 a week, right? Which is, from an American perspective,
it's a great deal.
It's a great deal.
Yeah.
Right? When you're in Brazil, it's also a great deal, especially when you're making like $500 a month, like not even.
Yeah.
So that's how I was making my money. And I'd have all these guys come over, right? And all my students were Brazilian. So these first like Americans and Swedes and Canadians came over. Basically, like class was at 7, but it never really started at 7. It depended on how well the conversation was going outside, right? And there was this one time the conversation was really good. It was like 7:30, 15, 20, 30, whatever it was. And I didn't have no one had their gis on. And all the foreigners all on the mats like, what the hell is going on? They were like, was the class canceled? They were really confused, right? And we're just like, why are these guys in a hurry to train? Like, we're 30 minutes late. I'm the gym owner. I don't care. And I'm outside just like having fun and we're laughing. And it's kind of like once it stops being funny, whatever time that happens, that's when training begins, right? That's kind of like the Brazilian mindset. And like I could see the foreigners kind of like they were really confused. And one of them finally came over to me like, Rob, is training canceled tonight? And I looked at the clock. I realized it was like 7:30, whatever it was. I'm like, oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, guys, we got to go. And it was like, okay, we got to go. But it was, you don't, I these days I don't do that. Like now I'm very American like that, like 7 o'clock, right? Or the Brazilians are it's almost like too much. It's fun. Brazilians know how to party, man. They know how to have fun. Like life is a party, but it's one reason why like I can't be there, man. Like it's just too much. It's all the time. It doesn't stop. It's like they live like that 24/7. On the positive side, there's not a lot of like depression there and anxiety, and so probably lower than most countries, I would guess. Probably lower, but it's very hard to get things done. Put it like that. Yeah, it's very difficult.
Well, I guess that brings around like there's a point where I feel like there has to be some structure. I think you would agree with that. It can't be completely disorganized or too relaxed, because then nothing happens. It's chaos. Yeah. Versus being highly structured. So, like, I guess the next thing that I was going to say that Keenan was bringing about that ruffled some people the wrong way was that he was going to, I guess a lot of schools, particularly the Gracie Barra schools, they're very strict on the uniform requirements. You have to buy the uniform.
We are too.
Yeah, you have to buy the uniform from them. It has to have the patch of this. You can't bring in other keys or whatnot. So then Keenan's going the other way, saying that I'll buy your gis from other schools or whatnot and give you one, or we'll donate these to charity. He doesn't care, right? So he's saying just come in with whatever. I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But
that's what I saw something somewhere.
Yeah, I saw something
that's
to
what
that
understanding.
It wasn't a strict gi policy, and there was something about buyback. and I think they were going to give it to charity or something, right? So again, a lot of people like the idea of that because as a consumer, more freedom, great, right? Like, oh, I can do whatever I want. As a business owner, I see that not so great, right? Yeah. One, you're losing revenue by not getting your gis out there. Two, when people are wearing other people's uniform, they're marketing for them, right? Not good for me. Right, like
for anyone, you're marketing someone that doesn't do anything for anyone.
Yeah, exactly. Technically, they're not doing anything for you, right? Because you're training at this gym, you know. So it doesn't make sense there too. And then three, there's like a lack of uniformity where everybody's wearing different stuff. You're wearing a white gi, I'm wearing a blue gi. You have like a Zenith Jiu-Jitsu patch. I have whatever Cesar Gracie thing. Like from the outside perspective, someone comes in, it's like, what's going on? It looks like chaos, you know. Versus when everybody's wearing the same uniform. It's different. Or at least it's a structure, like white belts wear this, and it makes sense. And I've been on both sides of this, right? Like when my brother and I started our gym, Freestyle Fighting Academy, back in 2001, we weren't ranked at all. I was 19, my brother was 20, and we ran it like a fight club. There was no uniform. You just come in whatever the hell you want, And people ask, oh, what rank are you? I'm like, I don't have a rank. And they're like, oh, my cousin's a brown belt. I guess he could beat you. Right? That's why we like, we sparred that. I think I said that. Right? We sparred day one, and we tried to kick you in the head and all that, right? But so when there was no rank, there was no uniform, there was nothing. It's chaos. And people from the outside, they're looking. They're like, who's the coach? Because everybody's it doesn't look uniform, So there is, to me, a value in having that hierarchy in that organization, and part of having a hierarchy is uniform. Right, like. And people don't like hearing the C word, which is cult. Right? Yeah. But jiu-jitsu is a cult. Yeah, whether you like it or not. The cult has a negative connotation to it. Call it tribe. Same thing.
I mean, football fans are too.
Yeah.
It's a social. It's a piece of social glue. That's all it is. It bonds people because we have a common rituals, common beliefs, common goals. Yeah. So therefore, we have common ideas. We band together.
You're right, and there are certain devices that are used by groups, cults, tribes, whatever you want to call them.
Religion,
right?
Politics.
And if you study them, there are certain things that all make them work. Yeah. And one of them is, of course, hierarchy. There has to be a ranking structure to know who is responsible for what or who has, certain power or whatnot. And in jiu-jitsu and in martial arts, we use belts. Right? Like you said, if you're in a religion, you have the pastor, you have the priest, and, archbishop, but there's different ranks, right? And that's one of the things of being part of the membership. The other thing is uniform, right? Yeah. Same thing, if you look at religion, they have different attire depending on what station they're at. In Jiu-Jitsu is your belt. If you go like Freemasons and all that, they have different badges or different things they wear. So like, it's part of the identity of the group, right? And when there isn't established identity, then you don't really know where you are.
It's like it becomes herding cats.
Yeah.
And I think what's going to happen is, because I was exactly like this when I first started. When I opened my gym, if you hadn't mentioned uniforms, curriculums, hierarchy, like any of these things, I'm like, get out of here, man. I was more like an anarchist. Like, I just like, as long as like everyone's on the mats training, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I had to learn the hardest way possible that it does matter, because people like structure, people like systems, people like hierarchies. They like, and I will tell you, man, like when people walk in, new students walk in, they see everyone in uniform, it's a wrap. They're sold because it shows them exactly what they're looking for. So, people might be in the impression that people like walking in the gym and I want to have whatever I want. It doesn't work. Like I've tried it. It doesn't. And not only that, everyone prefers a uniform. Like, look, for the school owner, you're making more money.
Yeah.
And you're giving people the structure they want. People are more likely to sign up, right? So from a business perspective, it's not even sense. Yes. Yeah. I thought, well, I'm going to lose half my students once I apply the uniform policy, right? Like for sure, half my affiliates and half my students going to walk the window. We didn't lose a single one. And there's some people that complain, it's like, hey man, I let them wear their gi until like once your old gi dies and it's torn to shreds, then you buy a uniform. Is that okay? Okay. And then that's the way I've been working. And the truth is, people like the uniform because it comes with a patch too. So you don't have to buying a patch and sew it on a patch is a pain in the butt. So that works well. And it's been very positive overall. Like people actually, I find that people prefer that. You know, and it's just like, another thing? There's one more thing I have to mention, because a lot of students don't realize. If you're just a practitioner, you don't realize this. Your coach does a lot for you that it goes well beyond the contract you signed. Now, every gym has a contract. If maybe your gym doesn't have a contract, but there's some kind of agreement. There's like an established expectation of what I do for you as a coach and what you do provide the gym as a member. Like, you pay me, I give you this, and that. And if you really that closely, what the gym promises you is basically class from 6 to 7 or whatever. I'm telling you, like, if I were to factor in the hours of work I put into my students where I wasn't on the clock, I mean, I'd be rich now. Like, I mean, the amount of work I have done for my students, and I never charge them for that. We're talking like coaching, we're talking them training on the side, we're talking, sometimes I drive to California, fly to, just for them. I'm not getting paid. But coaches do this stuff all the time for free. So when a student is adamant about not supporting the gym because he really wants to support Jeff Bezos and Amazon because I got to give that guy more money, not you, coach, right? That's the kind of student I don't even want, to be honest. You're not a team player. Like, if you're if you're really that serious about giving Amazon more money than your coach who's killing himself for you. And coaches don't make that much money. People think jiu-jitsu gyms are super profitable. They're not. Like, the reality on the ground is a lot harsher. It's not a walk in the park.
Most gyms have a hard time making money.
No, but okay, how many successful gyms are there?
No, for sure. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, most gyms have a hard time.
The reality is, like, it's super hard. So when your coach has like 50, 100 students, he's struggling, man. And you really want to give Amazon that money and not your coach? It's kind of like, almost like, you know what, man? Maybe you shouldn't be part of the team, that you're not a team player. If you're that serious about supporting someone else who does nothing for you. That's the thing. That's like my biggest thing is, like, this person or this brand you really want to represent is not sponsoring. They don't do anything for you.
Yeah.
You know, like, I go out of my way for you guys. Like, what is it about? What's the resistance? You know, so I don't apologize for it. Like, I started that way exactly what Keenan thinks is that would have been me 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I changed my mind completely because it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not as sustainable. And even, like, I think as far as even structuring it so that they have, like, fixed schedules and all that. Yeah. Like, I know a lot of gyms, they like saying, just come whenever you want.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not a good thing for a variety of reasons. One, you don't know how big your class is going to become. Yeah. If people start moving on one day, one the other, then you have too many people in a class and you can't devote enough attention to them. That's a problem. The second thing is it's harder to create habits.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the biggest thing that we're combating as, you know, being in the fitness space, which martial arts is establishing habits, right? Because essentially people, instead of coming to your class from, 6:30 to 8 or whatever, they're watching TV or they're doing something else, and it's probably not as good for them as training martial arts would be. And we have to replace that block of time where they're doing something that's not constructive with this. And it's more difficult because it's easy to sit on the couch, not easy to go drive to the gym, get your butt kicked, and then come back out. And to train them just to set that time on that one day or like 2 days, like Wednesday and Monday, it takes like weeks. Generally I think they say about 6 weeks to internalize a habit. And then when you say, well, you just come whenever you want, now they don't have to come to those days. So when I miss Wednesday, I'm like, oh, I'll come on Thursday. And then when Thursday comes,
it's a good point. I never thought about that.
I'll just come Friday. And it just keeps procrastinating because you have this free will where they say, oh, I can come whenever I want, but it doesn't hold you accountable.
Tyranny of choice.
Yeah, absolutely. You have too many decisions to make, right?
And
as a coach, you don't know who you're accountable for now, right? Because you're like, well, I don't have a roster because people come whenever they want. So if I don't see this guy come in on Wednesday, I guess he's going to come in some other day. But if I know, like, for our gyms, like, we have the schedule. So I know, okay, these are the guys, this is my guy. He didn't show up today, I can follow up with them, text, call, whatever. So from the business end, I have accountability. And then from the student end, there's also accountability because he knows he's supposed to be there that day. Right? And it's easier for him to make that habit to show up. So I do agree with you. Like, the structure is important. The uniform is important,
and people
coming in.
And people like it, man.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like when you set it up, like in the beginning, everybody, especially if you're making a change.
Yes, people hate change.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what it is. I could be saying, hey guys, everybody, we're going to give you brand new gis. You're like, oh god, but I like my old gi.
Yeah,
It's
they'll fight you over. They'll fight you over the most idiotic.
Yeah, everybody will resist the change. It's just a human tendency. There's
people like to complain.
Yeah,
complain is like it's entertaining for some people.
But it's just a tendency. Everybody's going to be scared or whatever. So even if it's good for them to change, and I, for the most part, as the coach, I feel that we have the most experience in the matter, so we're able to make the best decision in that regard. And like people say, oh, well, I don't like that coach. Well, then you find a new coach.
Yeah,
you got the choice to find someone who caters to your style. But I think if you get to start with a new foundation, that's the best time to lay out all the great rules, so everybody coming in is already in court, and you don't have to make those changes midway.
Yeah,
which are always a little rockier, know. So like a young guy like Keenan, I want his gym to be very successful. Yeah, I want him to do great.
I want everyone to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Like so I feel like while there's a good marketing approach to this, and he's going to get a lot of pats on the back from people. Yeah. That are not training with him.
He's shooting himself in the foot.
Right, because you're catering to it, like, at least, maybe I'm wrong, and hopefully I am, and it works out great for him. But a lot of people will tell you stuff online, like, oh, that's awesome. But again, most of those people already train somewhere. Yeah. And they're probably not in San Diego where you're going to be opening your gym. So while everybody's saying kudos, great job, like, those are not the people that you generally
How many people are going to leave their current gym for that, though? That's the other thing. Even some of the ones that aren't in San Diego, how many are going to leave their current gym? I mean, some of them are on the verge of leaving. They're going to leave for a different reason, regardless of uniforms. Right. But it sounds like I'm going to be the leader of the rebels. Let's start a revolution kind of thing. But I think long term, it's just it's not a good idea. Because I think the tendency, and this is where the sports have been going for years. All sports, they lean towards uniformization. They lean towards systems, rules, and it's just a natural tendency of sports. In martial arts, it's the same way. Jiu-Jitsu has always been a little behind, but it's catching up. And one thing that's been consistent throughout martial arts, BJJ at least, is that Gracie Barra has been leading the trends. And if you can take this back, Gracie Barra invented the affiliation system. Like, it doesn't exist in a lot of other, maybe other martial arts have it. I don't know. I wouldn't know. My suspicion is not very common, but Cornelius Gracie invented it when it was like he realized that Helio was very controlling. Helio was like, if we had it Helio Gracie's way, there would be no one teaching jiu-jitsu other than him. Right. He was like, no, you got to teach. So when Carlson opened his gym, that was a problem. When Holmes Gracie opened the gym, that was a problem. Every person that opened a gym that is outside of his gym became his competitor in some way, and he's a very controlling individual, right? And even though he played a very important role in development of jiu-jitsu and resisting judo, he at the same time, like, was not the right, like, it's like every phase needed the right person. The right person was there. Like, Cornelius Gracie was that guy. So I heard this story from Cornelius Gracie himself when we interviewed him for the documentary. And when Soka, which was one of the first ADCC champions, wanted to open a gym, like, Master Cornelius, I don't know how to do anything else. I really want to open a gym. I got to pay my bills. I got to feed my family. But I don't want to ever stop being your student. I've been thankful for everything you taught me. What do we do? And Cornelius goes, just go over there, call it Gracie Barra, and he continued to be my student. Okay, perfect. And that's how they started. This was in like the 1980s, maybe early 90s. I'm not sure when it started, but my point is they've always been ahead of the curve. Yeah. Right? So now we're following suit. Alliance is following suit. It's just a matter of time before. Like, I think Czech Matanatos are making those moves too. It's just a natural tendency of the sport. And students prefer it. That's the thing. Even if they resisted initially, now that we've passed that curve at the gym, students prefer it. They don't have to worry about patches. Like, and they hate that. Like, the patch is the biggest. It's a hassle. No one wants that, man. Yeah. So it's just like you get, and then at the end of the day, you're not spending more money. You're spending the same amount of money you would be buying if you would be buying. Yeah, online
or whatever. Yeah. So it doesn't make that much sense other than wanting to have the freedom of choice, right? That's about it. People, I want to choose my own stuff. I'm like, why?
It's only the old stuff. But jiu-jitsu, one thing that's constant too in any gym is that there's constantly recycling people. As the new ones come in with the new systems, it's normal. They don't complain. They like it. Like, parents love it. Parents walk in, man, like, you can see. They just like, oh. And not only that, like in other sports too, if you're in hockey or anything you do, you're going to get your kids started in soccer, you're going to have to spend some money on uniforms.
Of course.
That's standard, right?
Yeah.
Parents are expecting it. I remember the first 10 years I had my gym, we didn't have this. Parents would, like, with a checkbook in hand, like, well, how much in uniforms? And I'd be like, we don't have uniforms. He's like, oh, okay, put the checkbook away. He's like, guy's ready to write me a check.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's just counterproductive. It just doesn't make sense in the long term.
Yeah, and I think getting back to that point, when you're pandering to like an online audience, that's not really going to be your market. It deceives you on what are the right decisions to make.
Yeah.
Right. Like everybody thinks, oh, I remember when I started training, and then we had our own school. I'm like, how do we get the word out? Oh, I have to win a lot of tournaments. That's how people are going to start respecting me. Like, the only people following jiu-jitsu are guys who are already doing jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Those are not the people that you want in your school because they're already doing jiu-jitsu somewhere else. Yeah. The amount of people that you're going to be able to poach from other gyms is very slim. And you gotta fight. You gotta fight for that, man. I agree. And then the other thing is, if they're able to move from one gym to the other, there's nothing stopping them from moving from your gym to the next one. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's like taking someone's lover away from them. You can't really. She cheated on you. She's gonna cheat on him. Exactly. She cheated on him. She's gonna cheat on you. Man. You're gonna have a harder time holding on to that one, right? So you want like a new audience, and those people are not tuned in yet. So they probably don't have a uniform yet or anything like that. So why are they going to care where they get it from? Yeah. So I don't know. That's just my opinion. For like Keenan, like I said, I think and for the school owner too, it's advantageous because you get rid of the competition. Like when every school, like this is like perfectly advantageous. Why would you want to compete with other people? Like your gym should be a store too. Yeah. And people are idealistic when they start because like, oh, it's all about jiu-jitsu. And as soon as the bills start coming, you realize like this doesn't make sense unless I'm making money. And you can't train, you can't teach people unless you're making something yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to do something else, right? Yeah. So. No, so I think for sure. Don't be all hippie with the uniform policy and all of that. Make your own uniform. You have a cool brand already if you're going to do that. The Legion and all that. Might as well design your gis and have people buy those. It's not a big deal. It's a small expense. But at the same time, even if he changes his mind 10 years from now, people are going to use. It's too late now. It's like it doesn't matter when you do it. It's always going to be the case. Especially now where everything's archived. Every decision you've ever made. Dude. I forgot. People don't let it go. There's someone who remembers, man. Yeah, I think I was listening to a podcast. Oh, I think it was Edward Snowden. He was on Joe Rogan and they did an interview. And he was saying anybody born after 1987, every phone call they've made has already been logged. All right? So, like, if you're born after that date, essentially there's nothing secret about someone knows every dirty thing, everything you've ever said. Yeah. Yes. And especially now, it's out there. Like I think some of them they just have the record of the call, not necessarily the content. But like nowadays they have the content, you have your text messages, you have the emails. There's nothing sacred. So everybody can pull out whatever you've done. So it's harder to make mistakes in this day and age because you're going to be held a lot more accountable. Oh, 100%. But I think it's more just owning up to the fact that everybody's doing these types of silly things. They're just now more known. Like you could have kept your secrets much better back in the 50s. Yes. Right? Yeah. Or there wasn't cameras all over the place watching you. There wasn't funny? Digital records. The CIA in the 1950s during the Cold War would have killed to have that kind of information that people volunteer on Facebook daily. Yeah. It's like it was their job to basically, or the NSA, like to basically monitor their own citizens for suspicious activities, right? And here we are volunteering this information online, not just for the government, for everyone to see, right? In fact, I want to make sure that you know at what restaurant I was and what I was eating at 2 p.m. today. Yeah. People like every second of every move. And be sure, there's a log of everything you put on the internet, every Google search. For sure. That's why I think it must have been funny. Like, if you would have told somebody this 30, 40 years ago, hey, people are going to volunteer all this information for free. Like, no way. Nobody's crazy. Nobody's going to do that. Everybody respects their own privacy. Like, no, not really. You ever read 1984, George Orwell? Yes. Yeah. By the way, if you ever watched that movie, V for Vendetta, it is based off a comic. And the comic is based off of, it's inspired by the 1984 novel because it's a very similar theme. So, I think it's definitely a book everybody should read. Everyone should read, you hear the reference all the time, and people have the idea, oh, it's about Big Brother. Yeah, that's the easy way of describing it. But when you actually read how it was done, and then that's when people tell you, like, they didn't realize 1984 was a warning, not a manual of how to do it,
and
which is what it looks like.
A lot of people realize when Orwell wrote that book, a lot of people think, it was a criticism of Stalinism and Leninism, and that's what they assumed that he was writing about. Clearly, he's writing about the direction the Soviet Union is taking. Yeah. But if you knew Orwell was actually a communist. Yeah. He wasn't writing about the Soviet Union. He was writing about, Orwell was like a democratic-leaning communist, right? Different branch, but like he was which complicated. It sounds complicated these days, but and that's how he would define himself,
right,
leaning on anarchism. But he was writing about the world. He was writing about governments. He was writing the power structure in general. He wasn't writing about the Soviet Union specifically, as a lot of people assumed he was. It's like, you let it happen. It's going to happen in your own free country. Yeah. Like, and lo and behold, here we are in the freest, most democratic, or one of the oldest democracies in the world. And the government has access to every single little piece of information about you. The Facebook knows more about you than you know about yourself, which is mind-boggling when you really think about it. But we're living 1984, and it's not the Soviet Union.
Yeah. No, it is a very interesting yet scary proposition where you have these big companies that own all this data.
Yeah.
And
they're buying it. It's super valuable.
Yeah. No, it's
there's a documentary about this. I just watched it the other day. I can't remember. It's on Netflix. It's about exactly this, like how it's called. These corporations are amassing all this metadata, and they're selling it to political parties. Yeah. And they were like basically giving them the credits for winning the election for Trump, because they knew so much about the audience that their ads were so targeted that they were just hitting the nail on the head over and over and over. It's like Hillary was just like missing the target all the time because they didn't have that same kind of data. Yeah. But it was something to the extent of like Facebook having something like 5,000 personality traits on every single one of their users, like on average,
right,
like 5,000. Right. If you had to write down 5,000 things about yourself, Dave, I guarantee you wouldn't be able to.
It would take a long
5,000. Like I don't think I can. I'd get like 300. I'd be like, I'm out of things to talk about. Like I don't know what else. I have no idea. Yeah. Facebook has like on average something like 5,000 personality traits or like things about you that would be very valuable to political party or
for sure, because once you understand your behaviors,
any company, really.
Yeah, then they can predict what things you would like, what things you would do with
what's going to work on you, what's not going to work on you,
with a very good level of accuracy. Maybe not per person, but over a sample size of like 10 million people. Yeah, you can get good numbers out of that. Yeah. It'll be interesting if we ever get that type of data about jiu-jitsu.
I'm dying for it.
Like you get 5,000 data points on your opponent. Like, okay, and then extrapolate, put it into a computer. Give me the game plan that's going to crush this guy.
Yeah. So I think BJJ Heroes is the only website. I think they have done statistics a few times, and to me it's crazy that we haven't really dug into this more. Have you ever seen that movie Moneyball?
No, I haven't.
Everyone should watch. If you train, you should watch Moneyball. It's basically story. It's a true story apparently of a baseball coach, and he revolutionized baseball because baseball was very much like where BJJ is right now, where the trends are leading the how people hire, how they train, right? So if there's a trend, or like we're going to hire based off of tradition, like this is how we've always done things, right?
Gotcha.
And no one was looking at the numbers. And this coach is played by Brad Pitt. And he goes like, what you think is irrelevant, it's what the numbers say that matters. So he started hiring players based off their statistics. The only thing so he started building a team based off statistics. And he was saving a lot of money while he was doing it too. And everyone's like, there's no way this is going to work, right? Because he was breaking with tradition. And he basically revolutionized baseball. And from then onwards, everyone started basically looking at the math and what the math was. And it was like, you hire people, you do things, you prepare people based off what the numbers have to say, right? And to me, it's always a reminder of how people should train themselves and train their students in jiu-jitsu. Is not based off of trends, but based off of statistics, numbers. Like, I'm going to have to say this again, like ADCC. What was the main factor? Wrestling. All right? To me, like the number of the training in wrestling in my gym's been going up over the years. And I'm more convinced than ever that's for those people who want to win ADCC, it's like half the equation, at least half the equation. But the problem is people don't like to train wrestling because wrestling is brutal. It's very, very hard. Yeah. Which is ironic because the second you put them in competition, what do? They wrestle. It's like they don't like to train it, but when they compete, that's what they do. But that's how we should be preparing our students, is based off of what the numbers are saying. And there's not a lot out there. I really wish there were more.
In MMA, there's a lot more stats for sure. Like now you could see like UFC on their website. And then when they do their play-by-plays and whatnot, they're showing, you know, how many failed takedowns or succeeded takedowns, strikes, kicks. So they're getting those type of numbers more. But right now, that's only, from my understanding at least, in the UFC that they have all those stats, which is great. But it kind of doesn't mean anything because there's only UFC athletes.
Yeah.
If you had that type of database for all athletes in mixed martial arts competing, then you could make good like hiring decisions. Like, okay, this guy has this type of finishing rate, this striking rate, this type of takedown defense rate. He's going to be a good athlete. We'll bring him into the UFC or some other league, similar to like what you're saying with baseball, because it makes sense. Baseball stats are really prominent.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot easier to calculate those stats too because the way the game is played, you know, like I think a sport like MMA or jiu-jitsu is a lot harder.
It's very subjective, right? There's a lot of like things that are less like, you know, black or white. But for example, like one that I always remember, something I suspected was that I was right about a lot of things and I was wrong about a few of them.
Yeah.
But one of them was that the most common path to submission was passing your opponent turtles, so you get to the back and you choke.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is like, it makes sense to me. That sounds about right. The most common submissions were all from the back, which you know, confirms the other one. And then most common takedowns, I think, were double, single, drop suinagi, and kataguruma. I think those were most formal top takedowns, which sound about right, you know.
Sure,
The kataguruma is like, I don't see them very often. I think it was like that would have been 4 down the list. From memory, I could be wrong here, but I'm just quoting from memory. It was a few years ago. And then, you know, it's funny because I remember this well. I was having like mutiny at the gym because I wasn't showing enough berimbolos. So I'm like, well, first of all, like 3/4 of my students can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to focus on something. I'll show. I'm not Paulo Miao, but like I'll show, you know, the best of my ability what I think what the fundamentals are. But I'm not going to change my program because, you know, you and like 3 other people really, really want to do this. But that was like when it was first exploded, like maybe 6-7 years ago, whatever it was, and everyone just wanted to work on that. I remember there's one statistic that like it was just showing the most common sweeps, and the most common sweep in IBJJF tournaments, the black belt level was the number one was 50-50, which surprises everyone. But it explains as soon as you understand the seesaw, like
it's
the
easy.
back and forth, it messes up the ratio. It doesn't really belong there, but it makes sense because of that, right? But anyway, you got to train because the most common sweep you got to train. But number 2 and 3, I don't remember if it was closed guard and half guard or half guard and closed guard. Which really, like, I mean, I was expecting them to be high up, but it was even less, the berimbolos were less prominent than I even thought they were. Something like 4 or 5% of the sweeps.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even close to the whole story. It was like a very small piece of the story. So why are we going to put this laser-like focus on the things that are like not the high percentage ones versus like focusing on the high percentage moves, you know? But that's like when you tell this to BJJ people, it's almost like they're like, they understand it rationally, but they're so emotionally attached. We were talking about this with Kit the other day about emotional attachment to the moves. And like that's a great way to put it because it's exactly what it is. You're emotionally attached to a vision of what you're going to be doing when you compete. And even if your beliefs or your wishful thinking contradicts what the numbers are, you still like, but no, this is what I got to be doing. I'm like, but look at the numbers.
Yeah.
And I've explained this in class, and I still get people like looking up like, but if that's the best move, it would be the most common thing on the internet. And I'm like, it's not how that's exactly the point, you know? But it's very difficult to have that rational, logical approach to things we're so emotionally invested in.
It is a great point. And it's something I always tell people, like, if you want to get all these numbers, right, for yourself, like the stats, like what's my best takedown historically? What's my best submission, you know, and all my pass, sweep, it requires you to take notes.
Yeah.
Right? Or more precisely, it requires you to measure yourself.
Yeah.
So I think there's a common saying that says, what isn't measured isn't improved. Right?
Yeah.
Because you won't know.
It's a very good one, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like running without timing yourself.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know if you got faster or slower. You can guess, but you want to know, right? So it's the same thing with your jiu-jitsu. You have to take notes. After every training session, if you're a diligent student,
that's a good point.
Measure yourself. Okay, how did I do today? What were my winning positions? What were my losing positions? How did I lose? How did I win? You know, and if I used to do this for wrestling, I have journals. I had to bring them by one day. I had like 3 or 4 journals. I would just write notes nonstop, and it's how I develop my game plans.
That's good and smart.
Right, because I learned, okay, where are my strong suits? For me, wrestling, underhook was always a strong position for me. Far knee block, head inside single leg. Yeah. Those were my takedowns. And so I always focused on those. But likewise, recording matches. I think nowadays it's very common because it's easy. But back in the day, it wasn't.
It was a pain in the butt.
It was a pain in the butt. You would have to get someone to record. It was
by tape.
It was by tape. My brother, I think my brother and I were one of the first people doing that because we would record every match. We were doing it from high school wrestling. We would record our matches and then we would watch them afterwards. Yeah. And then we're like, oh, okay, this is where we messed up.
Well, you have a database too now.
Yeah.
I don't have that. I wish I did.
That's, again, kind of out of necessity as well because we didn't have coaches. My brother and I were our coaches. So how do we learn something we don't know what we're doing? We watch, right? Like I learned how to play half guard after I grappled Gordo. I lost to him. He swept me with a last minute half guard sweep and beat me. And this was back like in 2001. And I was like, okay, what did he do? And then I watched the match like 100 times.
Yeah.
And I studied the different half guard sweeps. He used like 2 of them on me. And then I just did those in training all the time. And then I learned how to play a half guard, but I needed to film because I didn't have another way. But it's, now you can buy any DVD and stuff like that, but it's still better to see yourself training. Like even just in regular training, film yourself sparring. You'll be surprised at the stuff you're doing or that you don't realize that you're doing.
It takes a kind of discipline that I don't have. I'm very always bad about this, but there was a minute there where I was recording my sparring sessions, and even though I'm no great striker, I've never been, I find that the advice I was giving myself after watching tape was better than the advice my coaches were giving me. And I don't mean this in an arrogant way. Yeah. It's because I'm seeing stuff, I'm more critical of myself. Yeah. And if you have 20 people you got to coach, you probably can only give so much time to each student. If in most jiu-jitsu gyms works exactly like this, right? Yeah. Most gyms you're gonna have 20, 30 people, one coach. It's hard to, you're not, but when you're watching yourself, it's all about you. Right. And I was notice all these bad habits I had. I'm like, wow, I can't believe no one ever told me about this. So that's a very good idea if you can record yourself or just keep a log of what your training session was. I've always wanted to do this and I recommend it. I've never done it because, like I said, I'm not very disciplined in this regard. There are days where I'll be in the gym. Maybe you're going to relate to this. I just felt like $1 million physically. For sure. I don't know what it was. I just I'm performing. My body's responding and my mind's sharp. I do get tired, but not lethargic tired. I can keep going kind of tired, And there were days where I just feel like crap. And I always wondered if it had to do with sleeping patterns, eating patterns, going to the bathroom, all these other things that in your life that maybe emotional issues, who knows, all these other factors that may be impacting your performance, but we're not aware of. So I always tell myself, man, I got to start keeping the log. The next time I have a really good session, I have to go back as far back as I can and remember everything I ate, what time I went to bed, and just trying to keep the log of that so I can replicate those good days for tournaments.
Yes.
But I just never did it.
That's the beauty of technology today. Because I was doing this on paper. It's a pain in the ass. It required a lot of discipline. Because I would write down everything I eat, when I fell asleep, when I woke up, how I felt when I woke up, and all the food, when I ate it, how much water, training sessions.
That's legit.
So, but it took a lot of effort, right? And it was only during competition windows I would be willing to put that type of effort. You know what I mean? Because outside just normal living, no, it's too much work. But now, the last one I showed, my MyFitnessPal and all that, I do that every day. I've been doing it for over a year now. Easy. I write down what I eat, no problem, and it records it. This thing, a Fitbit, tracks when I wake up, when I sleep, my heart rate, everything. So it's a lot less, everything's pretty much known about me almost automatically at this point, right? So it's easier to get those data points. Okay, I had a good training session today and I felt great. I can see it. Well, I slept a full 7.5 hours. I ate this at this time. I had this amount of time before.
So you have to input what you eat, right?
What I eat. That's the only thing I'd be putting in. This is tracking your sleep automatically.
And it's connected to your phone, right?
And it's connected to my phone.
Okay, so what's it called again?
This is the Fitbit Charge 3.
Fitbit sponsor us.
Yeah, please.
We're we need a sponsor.
And MyFitnessPal, while you're at it. Why not, right? So, but these type of things, you can track those things for you. So for athletes nowadays, this is cheap. If you're a professional athlete or just someone inspiring me, this is $100, right? And you already have a phone. and then the app is free. So like,
and the iWatch doesn't do that. The Apple Watch.
Yeah, they all
it does
do
that too.
I think
I have one. I just never use it. I use it for the time, and like I got my phone for that, so I should probably make use of that. But that's I'm becoming more. I watched a documentary the other day because it was like everyone's insisting, called Game Changer. Did you watch it?
No.
They're basically pushing veganism, and I like some things about it. Like, talk about like plant-based diet, but they never really explain what plant-based is, because like it's a big category. It was like hosted by the guy who fought in UFC, John Wilkes. I can't remember his name now, but he's a UFC guy, and it was an inspiration because it was like, I should probably eat more greens. Like, I'm like more of a meat kind of guy.
Dude, I'm so meat.
Yeah. But like, they made some good points. I think that they push it to the extreme. I don't think that stop eating meat is healthy. I really don't believe it. I don't think veganism is healthy, personally.
Yeah.
But I think we eat way too much meat. I think that if I can cut back my meat eat half of what I'm eating right now, I feel like I'd probably feel better. But there was some good points there about like performance and nutrition, and like just it kind of made me think a little bit, even though some things to me like didn't really add up there. The data seemed a little faulty on some ends, but I think that I am at an age where I'm just turned 38 now. I got to start watching out because I never really care. When you're 20s, you just don't care. You just go. Your body just like Wolverine, man. Like, and I'm like, you know what? I should probably start be worried about my heart and what I'm eating, and I put on a lot of weight. I'm trying to, I'm not fat, but like I could see myself getting there, if I don't start. I'm moving in that direction if I'm not careful. And it's funny because I eat less, but your metabolism slows down, so you start putting on weight a lot faster. And I just don't want to be that guy, man. I don't want to be a fat dad,
Right. No, you gotta set a good example for your kids also.
Your kids, for your students, man. Like, in general,
exactly.
Like,
I think it's part of the integrity of
living
a good, healthy lifestyle.
I'm not picking on people who are overweight, but it is an aspect of what we do is, being a role model in that regard. And it's not the only one, or the most important for that matter.
Yeah, I think it is. Your health at the end of the day is everything. Without your health, you have nothing. Yeah. You don't have a good physical body, you can't move, you can't do things, and then it affects your mind. And then, I tell you, like, your physiology affects everything with your mind. If you feel like crap physically, you will feel like crap mentally. Yeah. It translates, right? And it goes both ways. Like, if you have a poor posture, like you walk around with your head slouched and shoulders slumped, it's going to affect the way you think. Yeah. Right? It's true. And it's like a downward spiral because
there's
start,
research on that.
Yeah, they start feeding each other. Yeah. Likewise, if I have a good posture and I'm chest out, looking forward, it's going to affect the way I think. And then, so you can go either way, or your thoughts are bad and your posture is bad, fix your posture. And then the thoughts tend to follow.
The research I saw, there's a really good book, everyone should read it. It's called Think Fast, Think Slow by Daniel Kahneman. He's a very accomplished psychologist. And he makes a point, I think it might have been on that book. Everyone should read Think Fast, Think Slow, but I'm not sure I got this piece of research from that book. It might have been somewhere else. But it's basically that if you're sad, if you're not feeling good, if you force yourself to smile or sing or show your teeth, it actually affects your well-being. Conversely, if you're really happy, but if you frown, it actually affects, because our body language, right, or our facial expressions in this case, is directly linked to our emotions. Yeah. So it's the point you're making. Like, if you walk around like this, you're probably gonna start feeling insecure. So if you are insecure, open up your shoulders and put your head up. Yeah. It's funny because I was that kid before I started training. Like, I didn't know I was insecure. Maybe I probably was a lot more than I realized, but it was just my natural posture was this. This is how I sat down. And I think it had to do with I was so weak. I was a pretty skinny kid. I had no muscles to hold my back up. It was only after jiu-jitsu that my posture opened up. And I think muscle development has something to do with that, but I think a lot of it had to do with my confidence. Like, looking back, and I was insecure probably even more than I realized at the time, but I think these things, they interact with one another.
For sure. They link. Just like people can read your body language or understand how you're feeling, your body does the same thing. And exactly, you smile and you have association. Whenever you smile, that means you're happy. Yeah. Right? So if you force a smile, there's something in there that's saying, well, this is a precursor to being happy.
What does it for me is, like, Bob Marley always works for me. Especially like singing "Don't Worry." If I'm like having a bad day, I'll blast out in my car and I'll force myself to sing the song from beginning to end, And I can't explain, but it actually helps.
No, of course it would.
Like, it's just like, I'll force no matter how shitty I am, I'll blast the volume in my car and I'm singing Bob Marley on the way to the gym. And by the time I stop there, I'm like, I actually feel a little bit better. And the song is in your head now. Yeah. So it's like singing, don't worry about a thing. Every little thing is going to be all right. You know,
the lyrics and the song itself.
100%, you know, and it just puts you in the right mood.
You know, because at the end of the day, you control what's going in your mind, right? Like, when we talk about this a little bit with Kit, people think emotions, and even with Mikey, that you control your emotions. It's just you have to take charge of them. If you don't, a lot of people let their emotions run them. Yeah. Right? Like, they feel sad. Okay, now that means I'm sad. Like, no, you can change that if you want. But you have to make the conscious effort to do it. That's why people who are depressed generally have a hard time getting out of it, right? Because they're very depressed. What do depressed
spiral?
Yeah. What do depressed people do? They isolate themselves. Yeah. They hide in the corner somewhere, and they are usually, crying or lying down in bed, weak body posture. So everything about their environment only is going to fuel more depression, right? So like, you want to get someone undepressed, you got to yank them out of where they're at, right? Like I know there was a point I was like that, and then I was doing the same thing. I would hermit myself. I'd just go in a room. I was playing like online poker and other stupid stuff that was not helping me at all, Yeah. I had to get yanked out of there. Yeah. And then once you're outside of your depression bubble, then things start looking a little cheerier, Yeah. But when you keep yourself in that environment, it's only going to make you worse, right? So, if you're not that deep in, you can obviously take care of yourself.
That's a good theme for another podcast. We should extend on that one.
Yeah,
we should extend on that one. But like you're right. Like, I think there's these things, a lot of they interact with one another more than what we realize.
Yeah. I think to wrap this up on the last thing we touched on before we went on down that rabbit hole was just I think something important to me is the tracking and the measuring, right?
That's huge,
yeah. If you guys do that, I remember with Kit Dale we were doing that. I was filming all the sparring sessions that we did, and then when we would come home, we'd watch them, and we're like, okay, look, you see, this is where you went wrong here, or this is something that you did good that you should do more of, just for ADCC preparation. But everybody could do that. There's nothing stopping you from filming yourself train and just watching yourself, because you're gonna realize, and sometimes, like you said, it's better when you see it yourself, because your coach can tell you, put your hands up, and like, you don't pay attention to it. But then you watch yourself on video, you're like, oh God, my hands are down here the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, you don't really, like, from the third party, you're like, whatever. But like, when you see it yourself, you're like, I remember I was watching one of my fights, and I saw that every time I jabbed, I was throwing a little bit of a lazy jab. I'm like, oh God, I cringed looking at it. I'm like, this is such bad technique.
Because it's reality check.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, that's never happening again.
It sucks.
Yeah, that's never happening again now. But like, it's something that you have to do yourself. So I definitely encourage people, film yourself, measure yourself. You get one of these things, put the stuff on your phone.
I make my daughters repeat it every day. What is discipline? And they'll tell you. You can ask them. Discipline is doing the things you don't like to do. Because it's everything. It's everything. You can't get anywhere without discipline. Like, I don't always want to teach or always want to train, or I always want to run. I mean, everyone runs sprints, for example. But like, you if you have to do it, you just like shut up. Don't give yourself the option, Yeah. And this is where a good coach comes in place, or boss. Like, the reason why you get those reports done on time is because your boss will fire your ass if you don't. Whereas like, when you're your own boss, it's so much harder, because like, I'm not, like, no one tells me when to do stuff. I just know I got to do them. Like, I can do it tomorrow, and I can do it next week if I want. But everything else gets held back because of that, right? I got to constantly remind myself, like, man, you got to get this done. You got to get this done. And like, even like, sometimes I don't want to get on the computer and write. I'm behind like 20 emails. And I'm like, man, it gives me anxiety just opening that computer. Here come the problems, Like, I hate this. But I force myself to do it now, because that's how I make progress in my life.
Yeah, I think that's, I forgot who said this, but essentially a lot of people rely on motivation to get things done. And motivation drains, right? Yeah. I always talk about it as motivation's a cup with a hole in the bottom, right? You fill it, and then it slowly leaks out of you. And it's maintenance to keep yourself motivated. You have to constantly expose yourself to motivational material to keep filling that cup faster than it leaks. But discipline essentially is a safeguard of that. Yeah. Discipline doesn't give a crap about anything else. It's just, you always do it. Doesn't matter, you know? Like, so if you're not a highly motivated individual, or you have a hard time getting motivated, then becoming highly disciplined will keep you from needing to be so motivated, because discipline is just like you said, it's do or die.
Yeah.
You know,
you don't give yourself the choice of going to work or going home after work or whatever. Yeah. You just have certain habits. It's like, it's beyond that. You have to create that habit. Like, we'll go back to what you were talking earlier about habits.
Yeah.
And you don't give yourself the option. The second you're giving yourself the option, whether you're going to go train or not, you're on the wrong track.
Yeah.
The option is not on the table. One of the models in the gym is always like, not training is not an option.
Yeah.
And I live by that. You know, like my students every now and then, like, I'm not feeling well, I'm exhausted today. I'm like, what about that not training is not an option thing? I'm like, I bit myself in the ass with that one, you know. Like, some days I don't feel like training. Like tonight, I'm still jet lagged. I just came in from Europe yesterday.
Yeah.
I'll probably drag my ass to the mats, you know. But it's a good thing not to give yourself the option and just like push through no matter, you know, how you feel.
Absolutely. You know, when you do it enough, for example, like some of this stuff is kind of monotonous with the logging, the measuring, if you're putting stuff down. But over time, you come to look into it, because once you start seeing numbers and the numbers start moving the way you want them to, now you're like, oh, I can't wait to measure myself now and see what improvement I made, right? Like if you're monitoring yourself and, okay, I shot 5 takedowns and I scored 1 takedown. Like, oh, that wasn't that good. And the next day I look and now I scored 2 out of 5. Hey, I'm getting better. And then as the numbers move up, now you're eager to measure yourself because you're seeing numbers going in the right way. But the beginning, as you're saying, is not usually pretty, because it's a new thing and chances are the numbers aren't good when you're starting.
Yeah.
Right? Or you're just getting the baseline numbers. Okay, now it's looking for those improvements.
6 weeks to create a habit, you said?
Yeah.
There we go, guys. Start today. Okay, 6 weeks to create those good habits.
Yep.
Dave, we got to finish. I got to go. I got to reply to those 20 plus emails, pick up my kids. I'll reply to them while I watch them at gymnastics, and then take them to jiu-jitsu, and then teach a class, train, go to bed early. That's the plan.
That's a wrap.
Always a pleasure. Hope you guys enjoyed. Guys, if you enjoyed it, please share with your friends. You know, we really appreciate that. And we believe we're offering something that's really unique in the fight world. Like, we're trying to dive into fighting on a deeper level, not just, you know, the average topics. So, you know, we feel the community needs this. So I think that you guys can help us spread the word. We appreciate it.
Yeah, just send them to breakingtheguard.com. That has the links to all the different sites. Or you can just Google search Breaking the Guard podcast. That'll pop up on any of the podcast platforms. Thanks,
awesome.
guys.
Thank you, guys. See you guys next time. Ciao.